Radha Krishna Gopinath Shanta Radha Vrindavan Pati Jai Jai Ganga Bhai Ki Jai Shrimati Arjuna Bhai Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Shrimati Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Sadhveta Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru.
और आगे नहीं पूरा तो ये नहीं लगाऊंगा नहीं तो तैयार किया
Is enough space here for the harmony. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Some will just use the
Yes.
I have a friend in North Carolina who got his harmonium from them, Harmonium USA. That's it. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Banachari Yamuna Tira Banachari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Ram Ram. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Did I do that? So today we will take a look at Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 18. King Yayati regains his youth. And today's text is text 23. Grandpa's glasses here. Yayatiranabipretam. Oh. How do we do it here? I don't want to do anything wrong. Okay, so Yayatiranabipretam Daivo Pahritamatmana Manastu Tadgatang Buddha Pratijagraha Tadvachaha Yayatiranabipretam Daivo Pahritamatmana Manastu Tadgatang Buddha Pratijagraha Tadvacha Yayatiranabipretam Daivo Pahritamatmana Manastu Tadgatang Buddha Pratijagraha Tadvachaha. Others, please. Yayati anabipretam Daivo Pahritamatmana Manastu Tadgatang Buddha Pratijagraha Tadvacha Yayati anabipretam Daivo Pahritamatmana Word to word. Yayati, King Yayati, Anabhipretam, not liked. Daiva Upahritam, brought about by providential arrangements. Atmanaha, his personal interest. A little honest here, right? The previous word, upahritam. Oh, the universe must want it. And then atmanaha. Well, I kind of like the idea. Mana, mind. Tu, however. Tadgatam, being attracted to her. Buddha, by such intelligence. Pratijagraha, accepted. Tatvacha, the words of Devayani. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Shukadeva Goswami continued, because such a marriage is not sanctioned by regular scriptures, King Yayati did not like it. But because it was arranged by providence, and because he was attracted by Devayani's beauty, he accepted her request. Responsively, please. Shukadeva Goswami continued, because such a marriage is not sanctioned by regular scriptures, King Yayati did not like it. But because it was arranged by providence, and because he was attracted by Devayani's beauty, he accepted her request. Srila Prabhupada's purport. According to the Vedic system, the parents would consider the horoscopes of the boy and girl who were to be married. If according to astrological calculations, the boy and girl were compatible in every respect, the match was called Yotaka and the marriage would be accepted. Even 50 years ago, this system was current in Hindu society. 50 years ago, so now it's 90 or 100 years ago, right? Regardless of the affluence of the boy or the personal beauty of the girl, without this astrological compatibility, the marriage would not take place. A person is born in one of three categories, known as Devagana, Manushyagana, and Rakshasagana. In different parts of the universe there are demigods and demons, and in human society also. Some people resemble demigods, whereas others resemble demons. If according to astrological calculations there was a conflict between a godly and a demoniac nature, the marriage would not take place. Similarly, there were calculations of pratiloma and anuloma. The central idea is that if the boy and girl were on an equal level, the marriage would be happy, whereas inequality would lead to unhappiness. Because care is no longer taken in marriage, we now find many divorces. Indeed, divorce has now become a common affair, although formerly one's marriage would continue lifelong, and the affection between husband and wife was so great that the wife would voluntarily die when her husband died, or would remain a faithful widow throughout her life. Now, of course, this is no longer possible, for human society has fallen to the level of animal society. Many divorces. Marriage now takes place simply by agreement. Dampatye bhiruchir hetu. The word abhiruchi means agreement. If the boy and girl simply agree to marry, the marriage takes place. But when the Vedic system is not rigidly observed, marriage frequently ends in divorce. Om Ajnana Timirantasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militang Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitang Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadama Hyam Dadati Swapadantikam Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Yayatir anabhipretam daivopahritamatmanaha manastu tadgatam buddha pratijagraha tadvachaha. Shukadeva Goswami continued, because such a marriage is not sanctioned by regular scriptures, King Yayati did not like it. But because it was arranged by providence, and because he was attracted by Devayani's beauty, he accepted her request. There are a few things we can take away from this verse, from this scenario. And one is that, obviously, we're talking about real human beings here. King Yayati was very elevated, but he took over the kingdom because of interesting circumstances having to do with his father. And here we see that, and also we see Devayani and the other party involved in here, Sarmishta. These are all also real human beings with real human attributes. So a little squabble between Devayani and Sarmishta. Sarmishta was a little, maybe a little jealous, and there were some ill words between them. Apparently, some things spoken which were very hard to take back, and Devayani ended up getting thrown down a well, naked, and she was rescued by King Yayati. So of course you've got one dynamic going on here. My hero, right? She was rescued from this well, and as the king, his character and his countenance were probably quite noble. He was probably a handsome man. And Devayani, because of her lineage, obviously very beautiful. And so here's this beautiful, young, naked girl, and he rescued her, and she naturally thought, okay, first of all, I can't be touched by another man. Second of all, you're my hero. And so Yayati, as a follower of Sanatana Dharma, should have known that according to religious codes, as we see here, this is not a good idea. This is not a marriage that's destined to work out well. This is a marriage that's going to take some work because of the imbalance between them. He's from a Kshatriya family, and she's from a Brahmana family. She's the daughter of Shukracharya. So he was thinking, this is not a good idea. On the other hand, he's thinking, well, there's this poor girl. She's been seen disrobed by a man and been touched by a man, because I had to grasp her hand to pull her up out of the well. So she's kind of in a tough spot. And then he's reasoning further. This must be the will of Providence. The universe must have arranged this. So obviously, this is the girl for me. And then, but then the real thing going on is that she's actually quite attractive. And I really wouldn't mind at all. And we'll see later on how this is actually a big part of his motivation here, because he gets into trouble again. We'll see how the marriage is arranged. Devayani goes home and tells Shukracharya about her hero, and Shukracharya proposes the match. And then he says, but also the two girls are inseparable. So you have to accept Sarmishta as Devayani's maidservant. However, don't touch her. Right? There's going to be a big clause in the prenuptial agreement, right? Okay, so Sarmishta comes with her. She's going to be essentially part of your family, but don't touch her. Don't sleep with her. And we know how it goes. When you've got real human beings, real kinds of things happen. So he ends up having several children with Sarmishta and Shukracharya, because he's Shukracharya. At least he's not Durvasha, right? Boy, if it was Durvasa, losing his youth would have been an easy thing. That would have been nothing compared to with what Durvasa might have done. But so there's all this complication. So one thing we see is we need to be very careful and clear-eyed about marriage. It's not just dating. It's one thing if you go out together for a few weeks or a few months and you start to see that things aren't working out so great, and you agree not to see each other anymore. It's another thing when you get married. In the West, the marriage vows, I guess we call them, are until death parts us, right? For good or ill, better or worse, sickness and in health. We're going to make this work. And at first, when you're getting married, especially when you're getting married, when there's a whole, it's either a big snazzy marriage, or it's kind of a simple thing. You've eloped and run away to Las Vegas or whatever people do. And we have elopement in the Shastras as well, right? We've got the Gandharva marriage. We have a good example of that, right? Rukmini proposed to, when Rukmini heard about Krishna, she had actually never seen Krishna, never met Krishna. But when she'd heard about Krishna, she realized this is a much better match for me than this character Shishupal. What did she call him in her letter? A jackal. Why should a lion sit around and watch the jackal come and snatch his prize? So she thought, okay. So even though we see in their family life, Rukmini was a submissive partner. Satyabhama, she's the sparky one, right? Everybody's got a parijata bush in their garden but me. I need a parijata. So Krishna had to go all the way to the heavenly planets and get into a bit of a fuss to bring back a parijata. There's an old painting of Krishna and Satyabhama riding on Garuda. And there was a back in the late 60s and early 70s, there was a poster made with that painting. Krishna and Satyabhama riding on Garuda, and then the headline on the poster was "Fly Translove Airways," which was an allusion to a rock song from the 60s by the group called Jefferson Airplane. And it was a kind of just a line that was thrown in one of their songs. Fly, Translove Airways, get you there on time. So, marriage is it's a very serious thing. We enter into marriage when our eyes are full of stars, and we're looking at her and we're thinking, she's obviously the most beautiful, and she's the sweetest and kindest and smartest and funniest girl in the world. And she's thinking, he's so cool. We have this, in American culture, we have this trope or kind of cliche where the captain of the high school football team, or the first string quarterback of the high school football team, who's the biggest and strongest and best looking guy at the high school, marries the head of the cheerleading squad, the head cheerleader, because she's obviously and she was probably also, they were also probably the homecoming king and queen, And of course they got married. And so the high school football star ends up turning into a couch potato. And she's got the 4 kids, and the dishes piling up in the sink, and the stuff piling up in front of the TV, and he's sitting there on his lazy boy with his feet up, watching the games, dreaming of his former glory, and just become a complete bum. Maybe he's got a job at the hardware store or the mini mart or something. Whereas they thought, they were destined for great things. So this is a very serious business, and nowadays I see so many devotees approaching marriage very seriously. There's one devotee that I was working with in Hawaii, young woman, feels the need to be married. She's not in her 20s anymore, and because of a kind of, I guess, parental sort of protectiveness, I kind of became involved, and actually I saw someone I thought might be a match, and so I kind of put them together. It didn't work out, but both parties were smart enough to see that this is not necessarily going to be a good match. They're both wonderful devotees, both really smart, very sincere devotees, but they saw that this is not a good match. And they wanted to do everything very nice, in a very courtly manner. And then I've dealt with another couple as well, actually a couple of couples as well, and I've seen how seriously the younger devotees approach marriage nowadays. We've got the Grihastha Vision team. A couple of the people who started it are old dear friend, long-time dear friends of mine. I hate to say old. Karnamrita and Archana Siddhi. Karnamrita passed away a couple of years ago, which was a big loss for all of us. And some other devotees. I also know Uttama and her husband, whose name escapes me at the moment. And I've connected them with some of the devotees that I know who are considering marriage. So nowadays people are approaching it very carefully. When I married over 50 years ago, I got married in 1973. My wife and I hardly knew each other. We'd met each other. I was traveling through San Diego on my way to Mexico City with 3 or 4 other devotees, and we stopped in San Diego, and I asked this young woman passing by who was taking care of Tulsi. I took care of the first Tulsi trees in ISKCON in Honolulu starting back in 1970. And I was very inspired, I guess, by the health, the vibrance of the Tulsi trees in San Diego. They were much healthier than the Tulsis in Los Angeles. I'd just been living on a farm that we had in Hawaii on the Big Island, on the slopes of Mauna Kea. And this young woman was walking by, and I just asked her, who takes care of Tulsi Devi? And she said, oh, I do. So we talked about Tulsi Devi. I recommended an organic gardening book that was inexpensive, accessible, and that I had found very helpful in, in maintaining the gardens at the temple in Honolulu, especially the Tulsi gardens. And she went out and bought that book. And one of my friends, when we pulled out of the driveway of the temple to leave for Mexico City, one of my friends said, "That's the girl." And I said, "That's what girl?" He says, "That's the girl you should marry." And he explained to me why he thought it would work. And it did. Even though we didn't know each other when we got to know each other a little bit before we got married. We were married for over 40 years. And, it was partly because of her Krishna consciousness that when I was called, I guess, to move toward accepting sannyas, which was not my idea, she was a willing partner, reluctant, but willing. We see, Srila Prabhupada says, that the affection between the husband and wife becomes so great that the wife would die or consign herself to a life being a faithful widow. And generally that would be under the care of one of the children, one of the sons' families, if they have sons. So this is a serious business. We should understand that that a marriage is an arrangement to satisfy the needs of the couple, but also the broader society. Generally, a wedding is something that's celebrated. We call all the family and friends together, and we make a big deal out of it. We get together in a church, or maybe on the cliffs by the side of the ocean, or someplace that's special to that couple, and sanctify it by bringing in the authority of the state, if the couple is religious, the church or religious community as well. And in Indian culture, marriage is something sometimes that's celebrated over several days. It's a big whoop-de-doo, and it also often ends up with a big procession through town, accompanied by an English band, right? Big brass band. And so the idea is these two are making a commitment to serve together for the rest of their lives. Everybody come see. Everybody come bless them. Everybody come note, because there's also a little, perhaps subtle, perhaps not so subtle, social pressure for folks, for the couple to make it work. And it's not, as I observed many times over the more than 40 years that I was living with my former wife, not always easy, not always fun. Because you got two real people and then maybe a few more real people, each of whom, even though they sometimes know better, often acts as though they were the center of the universe. My needs are very important, and sometimes it's a long learning curve where we learn to subordinate our immediate needs to the actual needs of the entire family, or even more of the greater society. And we hope that that the couple will do that out of love, out of mutual affection. Previously, when marriages were arranged, like as Srila Prabhupada mentions, by the parents, the couple may not have known each other at all. They may not have seen each other before the wedding day. And we see that even now in married couples from Indian families, that it might have been, the marriage might have been arranged. But we've seen the ads Brahmin girl from such and such a family seeking such, So the parents may have made the arrangement, but over the years, the husband and wife get to know each other, and they get to see each other's good qualities, and they learn to work with or around the problem areas in the relationship. Best to work through them. I've been, one of my projects this year turns out to have been, and something I found myself wishing I had done last year when I first thought about it, but I was a little hesitant. But I've taken now 4 courses with the Karuna Care Association, which was started by my god sister and friend Rambhoru Dasi. And one of the things that we learn is that we have to acknowledge that devotees are human beings with real human needs. And Lord only knows how many lifetimes of trauma, of hurt, physical and emotional pain that they bring to this particular life, all these samskars from previous lives. And that we need to learn to deal with the actual needs of these actual human beings. After all, we're engaged in sadhana bhakti, and sadhana bhakti is bhakti for human beings. Right? Srila Rupa Goswami says in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, who's eligible for sadhana bhakti? Does anyone know how Srila Rupa Goswami defines the eligible? Who's eligible for bhakti yoga, for sadhana bhakti, according to Srila Rupa Goswami? Every human being. He says every human being is eligible for bhakti. Just as every human being is eligible to take bath in the Ganga during the month of Magh, January and February when it's cold. When I was a brahmachari, I lived for a while at our, as I mentioned before, at our farm that we had on the big island of Hawaii. And this was up the slopes of Mauna Kea, a mountain of about 13,000 some odd feet. And we would bathe, well, there were 2 modes of bathing for the brahmacharis in the morning. If it was raining, and it rained a lot up there, and I was there during the fall and winter, we would bathe in water from the rain spout, from the rain gutter. We had an arrangement where there was, I think we had 2 pallets and a rain barrel, 55-gallon drum. The 55-gallon drum would catch water when it rained really hard, and that would be water that the pujari who did the noon arati would use to bathe, because it was close and quick. And depending on how hard it was raining, we had 2 pallets where you would bathe in the water from the spout, from the gutter. The other thing, if it wasn't raining, we would go up the hill a ways and bathe in a cow pond, in a big cow pond, and it was actually the only water on the property. And so we'd be up there in December and January, and we'd jump into the cow pond, and someone would inevitably yell out, even in the month of Magh, January, February, when it's cold. And it was cold up there. We're thinking, oh, you're living in Hawaii, how's it cold? Well, I think we were about 3,000 feet elevation at that farm. The property was up above where the cane fields were, about 3 miles up the road, and I think our elevation was about 3,000 feet. So it was chilly. How did we get there? Trying to retrace my steps. How did we get to this brahmachari farm on the slopes of Mauna Kea? So anyway, This is something, marriage is something that we need to take seriously, and we need to take seriously every day. So nowadays, we have younger people who do take it more seriously. They actually get to know each other. I see this a lot anyway. Get to know each other, and they get to understand a lot of the dynamics of marriage. As much as my wife and I love each other, there were days when and she probably had the same thought herself sometimes, when I wasn't sure men and women were meant to live together, because we bring very different sanskars to this life. But and sometimes there's disagreement, and one of the things that we learn over the course of a marriage is that when a disagreement arises, there are two considerations we can put in the foreground. One is my ego. One is I'm right. And the other is in a sense, we're one. When we marry, when there's love, you and I become something different. You and I become a we. And the old romantic idea is that that's a force to be reckoned with. You and me against the world, baby. And so we figure it out. Sometimes you can't talk right away. You need some time, so you give each other space, and you just kind of let things simmer, let things settle down. And when things have settled down, then we can sit down. So we figure out ways to deal with it, just as we figure out ways to deal with children as they grow. I was reading something yesterday, I don't remember where, but it was someone was talking, maybe it was one of the devotees, talking about their children, and the daughter was like 13 or something like that, and the son was, it was something like acknowledging that this is the toddlerhood is their first adolescence. Right, well, I mean, what's a two-year-old's favorite? Any parents in the room? Any parents here in the house? What's a 2-year-old's favorite word? No, right? They're very attached to mommy and daddy. Whatever mommy and daddy say, that's what they do. And then around the age of 2, they start to get a little sense of independence. And they are able to survive because babies and toddlers are so darn cute. That's how it is that they survive, I think. Now, at the age of 5, the cuteness starts to wane a little bit. They start to lengthen out and not be so round and cute. And so you have to learn a different dynamic. And then by the time they're 10, especially, I remember boys. I had an ashram full of 8, 9, and 10-year-old boys. When I taught Gurukula at the Bhaktivedanta village, I had a Gurukula going in Honolulu, the late 70s and into the mid 80s, and then for a few years, my wife and I worked at a Gurukula in California, in the foothills of the Sequoias, of the Sierra Nevadas, near Sequoia National Park. And my ashram, I had anywhere from 8 to 12 boys who were 8, 9, 10 years old. And oh boy, was that an adventure. And I remember being 10, 11 years old. We decided we needed to be a gang. This was the 50s, late 50s. And all the cool people in the movies and TV shows were juvenile delinquents. And so we figured, since there aren't any, and the easiest way to be a juvenile delinquent was to be in a gang, but there weren't gangs for middle-aged white boys in the San Fernando Valley and Los Angeles area back then. So we made our own. And we made a lot of trouble. So this is a kind of a long-term commitment that's meant, first of all, I need companionship. And, especially as a man, I need some responsibility. And a woman needs to have a situation, needs to have someone to take care of her. Women nowadays are perhaps a little more independent. But what we find in a marriage is that we become interdependent. So wherever there are incompatibilities that are going to get in the way of our marriage, so here we have these considerations of pratiloma and anuloma, or whether they come from a devagana, manushya-gana, or rakshasa-gana situation. There has to be, that we want to make the best match we possibly can, so that it's not impossible work. So otherwise things become terribly situated, and as Srila Prabhupada points out, divorce, which is an easy thing to do nowadays, and there's not as much stigma attached to it as there used to be. When I was a kid growing up, we knew a couple divorced people here and there, not so many. And I remember I was 20 and in the Navy when my parents broke up. And when my mom wrote me and told me that she had left my father, there had been one transgression too many, and she was done. And she had taken my brother and sister and moved far away. It was a rough day for me. I was grown up. I was 20. I was in the Navy, and but I had to I actually went to my supervisor and asked for the rest of the day off so that I could freak out, because my parents' marriage of 20 some odd years had pooped out. So this is a big deal. And Yayati, he's got these considerations, these social considerations in mind, but he's thinking, oh, the gods must have willed it. This must be providential. Otherwise, how is it that I happened to come by while this beautiful girl was stuck in this well with no clothes on? So it has to happen. And so there are all kinds of complications and ultimately we see, as we do with all the Leela in the Srimad Bhagavatam, that ultimately people become more Krishna conscious. So there's kind of a happy ending up to this story. Everyone figures it out, and Yayati, we see that he's able to exchange his aged body with one of his sons. He's able to he's found one of his sons who's willing to actually exchange his youth so that he can go on and enjoy his marriage. And that is because that son is Krishna conscious. And everyone becomes more Krishna conscious at the end of the story. And this is the point of the Srimad Bhagavatam, that we've got real people with real problems that get in the way of our making spiritual progress, and we have to figure out how to work through them. And we do it better together. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada has created a society for Krishna consciousness. We're all in this together. I'm way over time. I'm going to stop here and entertain any discussion, questions or comments. Yes?
One question there. In our area, practice that the Brahman is there and Kshatriya, and Brahmani means Brahmana wife and Kshatriya, Kshetrani. If go to the downward, like Kshatriya married the Brahmana, meaning all kinds of sin. Is there not sin? Because of the Brahmana is respected all the time, so worshipable, and Kshatriya is not like that.
Well, the Kshatriya is also accustomed to being respected. That's their thing. That Ishvara abhiman, Ishvara Bhava that the Kshatriyas have, they're also used to being respected. So part of the problem would be that because the wife is from, if you consider the society to be hierarchical, the wife is just from a different gana, different jata, right? Jata has to do with birth or classification, kind. So that they bring different sanskars. So there are just more things to work out. Nowadays we don't have these distinctions. They're hereditary more than they are by quality. Generally, previously we understand that someone would take a birth in a particular family because of the qualities they're bringing due to previous sanskaras. The Shastras say that in the Kali Yuga, that everyone is essentially born Shudra, which means everyone's born for lamentation. Because we know how Krishna describes the material world in the Bhagavad Gita. One verse he describes it in the whole of our experience in 2 words. Dhukalayam ashashvatam. There's suffering and it's temporary. Fortunately, that means the suffering's temporary too. And so, we see Krishna advising Arjuna throughout the Gita not to lament, all the way up to the very final instruction, Sarvadharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarva papabhyam mokshayishyami ma suchaha. Don't worry, don't lament. Even if you happen to do something that amounts to a sinful activity in the course of taking shelter of me. In here it would be by neglecting your superficial duties as a kshatriya. Even if it comes to that, don't worry about it because I've got your back. Moksha Yishyam. I'll deliver you from any of the complications that might arise from that. But nowadays we really don't have those distinctions. I remember when we were talking about Varnashram and Dharma back in mid-70s, especially after Srila Prabhupada's Varnashram talks in 1974. Our temple president came back from India and he decided we were going to institute Varnashram Dharma in our temple. So, because I was the head pujari, I was a brahmana. And the devotee who was managing the temple, he's a kshatriya. Well, he's actually also very smart. So we'll consider him a rajarshi. And then there were other devotees who were married who were working for a living. Well, these devotees, they didn't have any skills at the time. So all they were really eligible for was driving taxi in the middle of the night. But they were Vaishyas because they made some money. And then there was a devotee in the temple who was an artist. And he was a Shudra. Oh man, did he bristle at that? Because he also knew more shlokas than pretty much anybody else in the temple. He spent his days chanting, reading Srila Prabhupada's books and painting. Nothing else. And next time Srila Prabhupada came to Honolulu, he asked about this. He said, well, they say the artists are Shudras, and Prabhupada said, oh, not you artists. Because he made a comment somewhere once that, he says that the paintings in our books are actually what sells them. Because the paintings were so beautiful, very attractive. So we don't have these distinctions very clearly nowadays. So we use other mechanisms to try to figure it. Some devotees like to use the Enneagram, others Myers-Briggs type indicators or whatever, and then they have all these counseling sessions, premarital counseling sessions, and the marital, couples counseling for before marriage and after marriage and things like that. And this is actually an intelligent way to kind of compensate for that. So how all these things happen nowadays, I don't think it's a consideration that is so clear to us. That's not me. Well, that's me dodging the question only to a small amount, because I don't understand. I'm an American. I don't really understand these things.
I grew up like that society. In my childhood time, I saw that somebody married, the Kshatriya married the Brahmani, and then they fall down. The Brahmana not accept, and then they put the Kshatriya Varna, the Kshatriya like Sudra, Brahmana to the Sudrani, and he just cut off by the Kichayan and all the places, the puja was even he totally cut off like that.
Yeah.
He grew up like a society. That's the reason they say if doing that mean if Kshatriya married the Brahmani, mean he's a sin. That's the reason he's sinner. His caste is come down and then he goes to Sudra. At that time that's it. Now it's almost collapsed, but I also saw a little bit like that.
Yeah. I mean, we don't want that. We don't want everyone involved in the marriage to end up a Shudra in the sense that they're always lamenting. And there's so much pain when a marriage breaks up. That's a trauma. That's a big trauma in anyone's life. Being through a divorce or your parents having been divorced. When we plot out someone's the traumas in someone's life, that's a big one to notice. And for me, even though I was 20 years old when my parents' marriage fell apart, still I saw that it was a cautionary tale for me. I did not want that for myself, nor for my wife, nor for my kids. And fortunately, it's not something we had to deal with. Yeah, it's a big thing, marriage. Serious. Anything else?
There's nothing online.
Maybe one more so that we can move on with our day.
Krishna, I have one question. What should a person do if their destiny and circumstance are unfavorable?
I'm sorry, I have hearing. I have really bad hearing, and my hearing aids are on the fritz. So.
What should a person do if their destiny and circumstance are unfavorable?
I'm still having.
If somebody doing abortion unfavorably, what will happen? Destiny. What is their destiny? Who is doing that abortion?
Abortion?
Right.
Well, that's, I guess, peripherally connected with the topic today. Abortion's it's the taking of a life, taking of a human life, and so there's much suffering for the people who engage in that in the future. Srila Prabhupada said something like, they have to take birth and be aborted a number of times. Probably, I think he said they won't see the light of day for a long time. So that's also a trauma. That's a heartbreaking thing to undergo. I remember meeting someone. I was living on Maui, and I had gone back to college, and one of the women I met, she was in probably 2 or 3 of my classes over a couple of semesters, and we became friendly. I remember her name is Nancy. I don't remember her last name or anything. Kind of see her face. And she mentioned that she had had an abortion when she was 18 or 19. And she said, I'll never do that again because it was awful. The experience, it was a traumatic experience for her. So there's trauma there. There's the trauma that's there, that's going to it's going to affect the course of this life, but also in future lives there'll be more suffering because of that very deep samskara. Krishna says in the Gita, I'm trying to remember the Sanskrit, he says that the way of karma is very mysterious, very difficult to understand. We can't trace out the intricacies of karma. So what their destination is, we know that there's suffering in the future. And so that's something to be avoided. Even people that you call pro-life nowadays, most of those people will tell you that we like to avoid having abortions if at all possible. So it's a very unfortunate thing. Same thing with eating animals, killing animals for food. There's so much suffering in the world. There's a poem by the famous Irish poet George Bernard Shaw called Song of Peace, where he traces out the genesis of our existence, which is one of constant warfare. Somewhere in the world, there are several wars going on, different places in the world nowadays. And Shaw, who was a very vocal vegetarian, said that this, could be traced to our slaughterhouse economy. So much suffering. And with the killing the animals, I heard from two of Srila Prabhupada's leading disciples completely independently. Srila Prabhupada said this to each of these two devotees, so I must have said it to others, that when we become involved in the eating of cows, that the karma is such that they would have to take birth as a cow, that people who become caught up in that cycle would have to take birth as a cow as many times as there are hairs on the bodies of the cows whom they've eaten. In other words, there's no way out of that cycle of suffering other than divine grace. So our business as devotees of Krishna is to educate people so they can understand, first of all, to the extent that we're able, how karma works, so that people have even better reasons, even more reasons to try to avoid something like that. Killing of animals for food, aborting children for convenience. Sometimes it has to be done. Otherwise, both the child and the mother will die. And that's a very unfortunate situation, traumatic. That's a traumatic thing. My younger brother, my mother's second child, only lived a few hours. And I know that that was something that was with her entire life. So, when we have to when circumstances are such that we find ourselves willingly doing that's suffering in this life and in future lives. Okay, thank you so much for your kindness. Grantha Raja Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.